Ever since the RAV4 came out in 1997, it's been a huge hit for Toyota in its compact SUV segment. For 2019, Toyota completely redid the RAV4 inside and out to compete with its competition. Let's see what Toyota's done to make the RAV4 just as good or even better than its competition. Let's get started. Starting out in the front of the RAV4, you'll see it looks a lot more angular in a good way than the last model. I personally like it a lot. The front end really reminds me of a Tacoma or a 4Runner. I really like that Toyota is kind of making differences between their SUVs and their cars. I just really think that it looks a lot more aggressive and masculine compared to last year, which kind of looked soft and cheap. This one looks a lot more up class. So one of the first things that you'll see in the front of the new RAV4 is that you have standard LED headlights. So it's an LED low and high beam, and it's a reflector version of it. And I believe some models will get LED projectors with halogen high beams. So it just depends which model RAV4 you get. But this is an XLE, and you also have incandescent turn signals and halogen fog lights down below. And I believe in higher trim levels you get more LED options. Like I believe in the Limited and maybe the XLE Premium you get a full LED headlight, but I do believe that the XLE is the volume leader for the RAV4s. I also really like how the front end is just really chiseled, especially if you look at it from the side. It just looks a lot better, like I said. It just looks like a different kind of vehicle. I would personally not think it was a RAV4. And coming along the side of the RAV4, on this XLE you get 17-inch alloy wheels wrapped around two 25/65 tires, and they are Firestone Destinations. It's a decent all-season tire, so if you want to take it soft-roading, I don't think it would do too bad, but if you want to get into the nasty stuff, definitely you need an upgrade for that. You'll also see the silhouette of the RAV4 is also different. It's a lot more 4Runner-like, and I kind of like it, especially these roof rails and crossbars. The crossbars are optional, by the way, but I just really like how it looks on the side, and you don't have too much body cladding on the side of it either, which is definitely a lot better than last year, because it was thrown all over like they had to do it, and this year Toyota put it in places that you may need it, but they didn't overdo it. Towards the back of the RAV4, you'll see that it's a lot, just like the front, it's a lot more chiseled. And the first thing that I noticed personally is the taillights. I really like them. They remind me of the 4Runner just because of how they stick out, but they also remind me of the Lexus NX from how they're square. But I do like them, and I like the dark tint on the turn signal and reverse light. And it's a LED setup for the brake light and tail light, but the turn signal and reverse lights are incandescent bulbs, which something I would change myself because I like LED bulbs. But other than that, I think Toyota did a really good job with the rear end, and you'll also see that you have dual exhaust tips on the bottom, which I wish were better integrated into the rear bumper, but they still look nice, and I'm glad that Toyota put them there, especially since last year we had some frumpy looking tailpipe. On the XLE and some other models, this trim is body colored right here, but on the Adventure trim, I believe it's a black piece right here, which I do like, and I am very interested in seeing the Adventure trim. Since we're in the back of the RAV4, trunk space has improved from last year. Also, since this is the XLE, you don't have a power tailgate, but on the XLE Premium and above, you do get a power tailgate, but it's not that heavy, so it's not that much of a nuisance. You have a little bit more room vertically and horizontally, but just like everything else with a rear tailgate line, you can't fit as many big things in the back. Well, you can't stack things up, but it's still not bad. You also have the spare tire underneath here, which is a donut, and you do have your tools and the rear tonneau cover over here. But one thing I like that I've seen on the CR-V and Pilot from Honda is that you can remove this tray and then flip it around. And if you have anything wet like mulch or a dog or something, you can flip this tray over and you won't get the back of the car too dirty. In the back of the trunk, you just have a power outlet over here, some lights, and there's that storage compartment again with all your tools and stuff. You also have some tie downs over here, but I'm surprised that you don't have any levers or buttons to fold the seats down, which other vehicles in its competition do have. But speaking about folding the seats down, it's not too bad if you do want to do it. There's just these two handles at the top of both seats that you just pull this lever down, and then the seats fold almost flat. It's a 60-40 split seat, and you have a folding center armrest with two cup holders in the middle too. And it's actually pretty soft and comfortable, but I'll get to the rear seats later on. Now that we got all of that out of the way, here's the key fob just before we get inside. So it's Toyota's new version of their key fob. Toyota started using this key fob right when the Camry first came out. Well, this new generation of Camry. I do like that you have RAV4 on the back of the key fob, so it feels pretty nice in my hand. And you do have Toyota's smart key access system, so you can just walk up to the car. To unlock it, just grab the door handle, and then it'll beep twice, and then to lock it, just press that little indentation on the top of the door handle. Now looking at the door panel, this top piece is hard touch material, which I wish that Toyota put better materials, but this is a mid-level model, so you don't get everything. But you do have a soft touch armrest over here, and this is more plastic over here. All four windows are automatic, and there are your window locks, door locks, and mirror controls right here. And below that you have a bottle holder and some storage down there, and I like that you have RAV4 etched into the plastic over here. Now looking at the seats, on the XLE, you have a gray cloth material. It's two-tone, which is nice, and it's a nice feeling material, and when you're driving it's actually pretty comfortable as well. But you have a manual driver and passenger side seat on this model. So this is for the height, this is to recline, and to slide it is right here. Getting inside, I really like what Toyota's done with this new interior. It's just closing the door, you can hear how much more quiet it is from outside to inside. And the steering wheel, it's a 3-spoke leather-wrapped steering wheel, the same one that you'll see on the Corolla and Camry. And the horn has a little beep beep horn like a RAV4 normally does. And looking on the left side of the wheel, you have your volume and audio controls. So this is the volume, this controls the center display, there's the Bluetooth phone button so you can pick up and hang up, and there's voice control, and the back button is right here. And looking at the right of the wheel, all your cruise control and more of your audio settings are on this side. So this is for your adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, turn your cruise control on and off, set, resume, and cancel. The mode button changes the different audio sources, and there's a track forward and backward button. Behind the wheel you have your headlight controls, the headlights are automatic, and the wiper controls on the right. Now just like every car with push button start, you just keep your key fob anywhere inside the car. And one thing that I noticed when I first picked this car up, the start button is kind of out of the way of everything. You can't really see much, so you kind of have to look for it. So it's right there, so you just put your foot on the brake and press the button. So this particular model has the 2.5 liter dynamic force 4-cylinder. It's a pretty loud engine, but I'll talk about that later on. Looking at the gauges, I really like the font and just the colors of them. Like on the left you have your tachometer and temperature gauge. On the right you have your speedometer and fuel gauge, and in the center you have your multi-informational display. And like I said, you use these buttons to control it. So if you want to use it, you use the left and right arrows to scroll through. So this is vehicle information, your driver's safety systems, trip computer, settings, vehicle warnings and messages, and back to the information. And there's a bunch of different pages in between those tabs as well. So once you're inside of the new RAV4, it's honestly a pretty nice place to be. All the dash is an interesting feeling rubber material. It does feel nice, at least it's not hard, cheap feeling plastic. And the lower dash, where it's a lighter color, it's also nice, and you have some stitching in the middle, which kind of looks brown, I think. the biggest thing that a lot of automakers have been doing is putting this floating iPad looking center screen. So on this particular one, it's a 7-inch touchscreen display. You have Apple CarPlay, but not Android Auto. You do have Amazon Alexa as well. All the controls on the screen are just really easy to use, and it's not that confusing if you're an older person looking to get this car. There's just a bunch of hard touch buttons which do the same thing as the buttons in the screen itself. It would be a little bit nicer just if it was a little bit quicker to respond, but it's not too bad, especially for this being the lower end of the RAV4's infotainment systems. Also, when you put the car into reverse, you have a backup camera, but you don't have different angles or different views. It's just this one view, and you have guidance lines which don't steer with the wheel, unfortunately. But on higher trim levels, you can get a 360 view camera, which is actually pretty nice, and the quality is pretty good. The quality of this camera is decent. It's not the best that I've seen in the segment, but it'll do. The seats are actually pretty comfortable too. They're not crazy supportive, which is something I did not expect. I think I'd be perfectly fine on a long road trip. Headroom is really good too. I'm about 5'8", and I have a lot of headroom, especially because the sunroof just goes up. That probably gives me about, well, however much this is, maybe 5 inches of headroom. You also get dual zone climate control, which is automatic, and I do like that all the knobs and buttons are fairly easy to read and distinguish. The traction control off button is under the climate control. It's weird, you don't actually get heated seats as standard equipment with the XLE, which is something that the Honda CR-V, at the top of my head, I know the EX model has that. Below all that, you get a USB port, which you can use for CarPlay and a 12-volt power outlet. The RAV4 gets the same 8-speed automatic transmission that you can see in the Camry, and that's paired with the 2.5-liter 4. It doesn't have paddle shifters, but it does have a manual mode that you can click the shifter up and down with. So next to the shifter, you have your electric parking brake. These are a bunch of your drive mode buttons. I wish that Toyota just put it in a dial, because, I don't know, this might confuse some people. But there's the Eco mode, Normal mode, Sport, Snow, Mud and Sand, and Rock and Dirt. And when you turn these different modes on, like Mud and Sand, it shows up on the screen. It turns off the traction control and pre-collision system, and it shows the all-wheel drive monitor right there, which is actually pretty cool because kind of means that Toyota wants you to take this thing out on the trail. You also have 2 cup holders right here behind that, and I like that you have a 2-tier storage setup. So you have this open console right here, and looking at the glove box, if I can get to it, it is damped, and it's kind of on the shallow side, which is usually what I've been seeing with newer cars' glove boxes, but it's not too bad. Like, you could fit the manual or maybe an iPad mini or something if you're that type of person. Up here you have a manual dimming rearview mirror, and behind that you have your interior light controls right here. The sunroof controls are on these 2 toggles over here, and the SOS or Toyota Safety Connect button. And of course you have visors with lights and mirrors. And Jacob and Yuri, just if you guys are watching, I don't know if you guys are, it does not pass the visor test, which is kind of a bummer. But you do have these little extensions over here. Now, getting into the back seat of the RAV4, the driver's seat is at my driving position. So like I said earlier, I'm 5'8". And I have about 2 or 3 inches of legroom behind my driving position, and I can fit my feet under the seat, which I'm actually pretty comfortable. And the seat does look wide enough to have 3 adults, but I think it would be a little bit tight. But you can definitely have 3 baby seats right next to each other. I hope you don't have 3 babies at the same time.
Does it feel good? Yeah.
What's also nice is that Toyota implemented rear air vents for the rear passengers, so I'm glad they didn't forget about the people back here. And you also have 2 2.1 amp USB ports in the back. One weird thing is that the driver's side doesn't have a map pocket while the passenger side does. Just one thing I noticed. Headroom is actually just as good as the front seats as well, because they kind of cut off where the sunroof goes, so they still save rear headroom. So I have, just like the front, maybe 4 inches of headroom. So I think that's pretty comfortable. Especially last year, the rear seat wasn't that comfortable. So under the hood of the RAV4, the first thing that I noticed as soon as I opened the hood is that the engine bay of this thing is big. I mean, like, you could fit a 2GR engine in here, the V6 from the Camry and Avalon, and I think you could still have a decent amount of workable room. I mean, there's like a solid 7 inches or more of space behind the engine of this. But under the hood of this particular one, you have a 2.5 liter dynamic force 4-cylinder, the same one that you'll see in the Camry, that makes 203 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque. And those numbers, I think, are personally pretty competitive, especially compared to the CR-V and the Rogue and other SUVs in this segment, especially for being a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. I think that's really good. Now, for fuel economy, you should be expecting about 25 miles per gallon in the city, 33 on the highway, and the combined rating of 28. I don't think that's too bad, especially for being the gas variant of this car. But if you do want better fuel economy, I definitely go for the hybrid. Oh yeah, wait. If you're looking for the hood prop when you just open this at the dealer or something, it's on the hood. It took me a few seconds to find that out. The hood's actually pretty light too. Now let's hear how this thing sounds. So behind the wheel of the RAV4, first, the turning radius is actually pretty tight, and throttle response is decent, but sometimes it can be a little bit laggy. But I'm about to go on to this main road here, which is kind of quick. I feel like it's gonna... Wow, it's quick! It's quick, and the steering tightens up a lot. I'm surprised, actually. That's like, it peeled. Like, I had to pick the camera back up. Wow, and going back into normal, it's not bad. The steering is actually pretty good. I mean, there's not that much road feel, but it's actually pretty responsive, especially in sport mode. I'm surprised how much it livened it up. And pulling up that hill was really good. It's definitely an improvement from last year, especially this 8-speed transmission. So we're gonna get on the highway, but now one thing is, this engine is kind of noisy. I noticed as I was getting to the parking lot that I shoot at, the engine makes a lot of noise, even under normal acceleration, because I usually don't peel out before I film. Sometimes the transmission acts a little bit weird between some shifts. I noticed that not just now, but when you're lightly accelerating, sometimes it might not know exactly what to do. The RAV4 is actually pretty quiet on the highway as well. There's not that much road noise. Now, passing power. The lane departure warning is kind of annoying, but it gets out of his way pretty quickly. Now at 70 miles an hour, these crossbars really make a lot of noise. I'm not exactly sure if it is the crossbars exactly, but I'm hearing a lot of wind from up top. Now around some kind of tight corner, not really. Like I said, the steering is firm and planted, and I don't feel uncomfortable at some lightly spirited driving. And these are with the smaller wheels and tires. So this model is not the sporty model at all. Like I said, engine noise isn't terrible, but at sometimes you can hear it pretty loudly. That's probably just what you get with getting a 4-cylinder, but it's not like this horrible buzzing in your ears. Now, one thing I always try to take note of while I'm driving cars is how easily I can reach the buttons while I'm driving it, because you might want to change the radio or do whatever. And I can reach the top right of the screen, which is actually pretty good, because in some other cars I can't really do that. And of course the climate controls are right at my arm's reach. I don't even have to extend my arm. There is a little bit of a delay between shifts when you're just normally driving. It's nothing to notice, but the shifts are smooth, but they're not as crisp as I'd like. Now, like I said, it's loud, but it's not slow. I mean, it's definitely a lot peppier than last year's 2.5. As for trim levels, the RAV4 starts at the LE, which is $25,500. Then there's the XLE, like the model I'm testing, which is $27,300. Then there's the XLE Premium, which is $29,500. Then there's the Adventure, which is my favorite trim level of the RAV4, and that one is $32,900. And then finally there's the Limited, which is $33,500. The Adventure trim gets a different type of all-wheel drive system, and all-wheel drive is standard on the Adventure and Limited, and optional on the LE through XLE Premium. The top competitors that I can think of at the top of my head would be vehicles like the Honda CR-V, which is neck and neck with the RAV4, the Mazda CX-5, which has a new 2.5-liter turbo, the Jeep Cherokee, which is the most off-road worthy out of all of them, and it also has an optional V6 or 2-liter turbo, which are both high-output engines. There's also the Ford Escape, which has a 2-liter turbo, which has a decent amount of power, and there's the Subaru Outback, which has an optional 6-cylinder as well, but the CVT in that thing makes it a dog to drive. That's all I have for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed getting up close and personal with the all-new 2019 Toyota RAV4 with me today. If you have any questions about it, just leave them in the comments below, and I will most likely get back to you as soon as possible. Feel free to subscribe, because it's free, and I'll see you guys in the next video.